Okay, who is DeckofManyThings playing against here? Raglig with Dimir, DeckofManyThings with Tetzot. I love Tetzot. I think Tetzot is one of the strongest champions in the game.
And that didn't come out. That didn't come out till relatively recently, right?
I
Or
mean, I've
has it
been
been?
using Tetzot for a long time. Um, but yeah, I mean, really, we're only seeing Tetzot in constructed now. But in limited, he's been fairly useful. There are the way that the metagame works in limited now is that Tetzot perhaps isn't the best choice, but ultimately it just puts a massive troop onto the board.
It's
Um,
it's 6 costs, and what does calculation come out to? You get a 3/3, and it's worth it, something like that.
mhm. Yeah, a 3/3 usually is worth it, but sometimes you can get way more than that, and you don't really need to be running more than the regular amount of shards either. It can help, but one shard isn't really going to make too much difference. Like a very very small increase in average attack and defense on it. It's just a straight up card advantage, and having a card on board is potentially better than drawing a card or destroying a card.
Now, in the matchup here, Tetzot Mono Ruby, and it seems to be an aggro version. We have a 5 minute delay, so I'm not going to hide the hand. Versus Blood Diamond Dimid.
And we see an Anarchist coming out. Anarchist, of course, is a 2-cost double ruby threshold card that allows both players to draw a card if it connects directly to the opposing champion's face. A little bit risky. Making your opponent draw cards can be bad for you, but honestly, if you're putting the pressure on, it may not be too bad. But against a blood deck, it's probably the most risk, really. Allowing them to draw into their board wipes might be kind of bad, but as you can see, it's working pretty well so far. We've got uh, Raleigh down to 14 here, and Raleigh hasn't even had time to put his shoes on.
In addition, what these anarchists have been drawing the shards. Deck of Many Things did start with a 2 shard hand, so hanging in there, able to actually play most of that hand. Some neat stuff here.
He sat here as well on two crackling bolts and a crushing blow, which he only needs to do a tiny bit more damage to Raleigh, and he's got him. This is a very quick start.
That's a cool card. Fiendish Cabalist and Constructed.
It's certainly a cool card considering that he has two anarchists on board right now.
Fiendish Cabalist is +1/+1, starting off at a 0/1 for every card in your opposing champion's hands, and looks like he does not mind his opponent having all the cards he wants if he gets that damage in super fast.
Very powerful with the boulder toss he has in hand too. Playing a Fiendish Kabbalist and using a boulder toss on it when your opponent has a hand of 7. Pretty strong.
Now there's
What he chooses
almost
to do,
too
he's got a lot of options here. A lot
there's
of
almost
options.
too many options. He didn't draw a 4th shard, so he's got a bunch of 3 drops he can decide upon. And decides for Jags, inspiring his future troops with double damage. But
Option for
Raleigh
Jags
is at double blood and is approaching turn 4.
I think the Jags play here was probably due to the possible extinction play next turn. It's his least important troop, I feel. Obviously, the Fiendish Kabbalist is. He doesn't want that to die without being able to just boulder toss to the face.
He has to
Uh, that,
discard
that's
2 cards. There's a Kier and a Crushing Blow. If he expects extinction, Crushing Blow isn't really useful without a speed troop. In Zakir, at least likely to be seen. Raleigh does indeed draw an extinction in the 5 free cards that he's gotten from Psychotic Anarchist.
It's actually a real shame for Deck here that he hasn't drawn that 4th shard in the last turn because potential Tarask would have come down this turn, and he just hasn't got there despite the amount of cards he's drawn. We'll probably see.
Kabbalist.
I'm not sure. I mean, Kabbalist is optimal here because obviously the later he leaves it, the fewer cards Raleigh is going to have in his hand. That's a 7/8 that needs to be dealt with. That isn't dealt with. One attack from this guy is going to potentially end you with those boulder toss in hand.
Possibly not even needed.
So again, we're left with the dilemma. Solitaire Exile comes down. The dilemma being, do you play an actual card to get board state, or do you remove the threat? As long as DeckofManyThings keeps playing the threats, Raleigh can't really do much here. But the marble is getting ever closer to becoming something, and in this situation, it might be better to go for cavalry just to get the immediate and needed life drain.
With this, he can do that immediately. He has the resources, gets the soul marble to 5 counters, can spend all 5 resources on his next turn to get that cavalry. And punch his health right back up to 16.
And he may well do that. He has the resources open, and that would definitely help here. Of course, it would make the rest of his troops not have the steadfast and spell shield. Looks like he's gone straight past his combat phase, though, opting not to just run that out there. There isn't anything that can respond to that in Ruby, so he didn't need to be afraid of, something happening to his marble in response.
This is interesting.
I believe this is probably for the charge power here because he has Lord Alex. He wants to get to 6 in order to have that speed elemental.
He's able to bait out a murder because not speed to remove the speed elemental, but that is.
I mean, he's in pretty good shape here. It's only a 4/4. Again, making him use the resources there in order to not die means that he can't get the cavalry out in his end phase. He's going to have to do it in the following turn, which might be pretty good for him. He does have 5 resources now and a Tarrasque in hand. If the cavalry does attack, he's likely going to need to block. Still, he will go to 10 if he goes to cavalry and gets the life drain. But he likely will need to block that Tarrasque.
And even still, the Tarrasque is going to do 2 damage. So with this attack, Raglig is going up to 10.
I think opting for the cavalry here was the right choice. Inquisition is likely going to out this rampaging Tarrasque, which is really bad news for Deck. That really changes things. That was a very well-timed and well-placed Inquisition. With Dimid and Soul Cavalry, it's going to be hard for things to look favorable for Deck here. That was pretty strong.
We were just talking before this about the effect of hand removal. We have an Inquisition being used here and there, but it's not strongly used. It hasn't been a major force in a lot of blood decks. People go opting for just outright board wipe, murder, other things, but sometimes can be brutally effective. And Raleigh gets perfect knowledge of his opponent's hand too. Actually, interestingly, he removes a boulder toss.
We need to ask you guys if you would like to drop. If you are dropping, then you will need to resubmit your drops because there was a problem with the form. It's sorted out now. So if you would like to drop from the event, then you will need to resubmit, redo the form. Sorry for the inconvenience, but things happen.
So Raleigh has perfect knowledge. He knows this Tarrasque is coming this turn. He opted to remove boulder toss instead.
Mm. Which is a little bit strange, in my opinion. Um,
He has one resource.
I don't think the boulder toss was a threat when you have a cavalry and Dimid. I mean, it would remove the Dimid, remove the cavalry even, but that would require using the rock elemental to block
I almost would
and
attack with
and
the
boulder
Rock
toss.
Elemental 2 here to get 4 extra damage. Then again, the Trask isn't fatal either.
Okay, so here's the block. I mean, he wouldn't have needed to do that had he removed that. Inquisition was an interesting one. I will say that, but we don't know what he's got in his hand. He does have 5 cards, so he could have any number of things here to help him out.
5 of those 6 cards in his hand might have been drawn by Psychotic Anarchist early in the game. It's kind of the downside to such an aggressive troop. 2/2 speed that draws you a card, but draws your opponent a card too.
And this is the power curve of control type decks. Deck of Many Things deck has peaked, and it is now declining in power. And this is really where control comes into its own, and it kind of stays there for a long time. Once you get to this point where you've got card advantage on your opponent, and you're not in immediate danger of losing the game, you kind of have a hard time being beaten. Deck has no choice here but to put the Fulmination down. He doesn't have anything currently in his hand to close this game out. He only has a 1/4 Rock Elemental thanks to Inquisitor, and Raglig is sitting on 8 health and 4 charges, which is pretty good for him.
And with that, the Boulder tosses powers cut into a quarter. 1 damage from Rock Elemental. Oh, interesting. That must be a main deck Meek.
It is, and it's not a bad call, really. I mean, it deals with a lot of the dwarf aggro stuff. Obviously, you can't kill the Electroid with it, but you can stop the Electroid from being able to go in by killing off one of his friends. It deals with Cerulean Mironite very effectively. There's a lot of things that in this metagame that Meek will stop early on. It obviously kills Stormcloud as well.
And combined
So
with that
it's a pretty good
Inquisitor.
thing.
Combined with that Inquisitor, the reach of that Meek is quite increased.
Exactly, yeah. With anything that reduces attack, it's pretty powerful. There's a lot of things you can kill once you've reduced their attack by 3. Yeah, it's a pretty good shout, and I'm liking that quite a lot.
And just more problems for a deck as Inquisitor can attack, Cerebral Fulmination benefits Raglig before himself. He gets to draw 2 cards too. A Soul Marble on the table late game means that's getting ramped up really quickly.
Yeah, honestly, not that surprising. The Meek, the biggest problem for Blood Diamond in the metagame right now is a 1/2 cost Sapphire card. A 1/2 2 cost Sapphire card even. And that's the Mironite, and as soon as a few things get inspired by Mironite, then your extinctions become far, far less powerful.
I pay for it to let you draw bunches of cards.
Boulder toss onto the... that's interesting. I guess this play here is to force him to replay the Inquisitor instead of finishing his marble.
Which he doesn't have to do.
He doesn't have to do that, no. He can just go to Cavalry. But I doubt he wants to do that. He probably wants the armaments this time. That's probably what he wanted. He may go to Cavalry now. He's lost the Inquisitor, but he probably wanted to go to armaments there. So it's more like disruption than prevention or turning the game around. He's just making his opponent think in a different way now. But yeah, I mean, he was already on the bad side of control here. He was, at card disadvantage, and most of his threats had been dealt with. That Fulmination really, at this point, is only helping his opponent more.
It's a last-ditch effort. Deck has no cards left in hand. And Raglig has all of them. He has to block here, but it's already life drain. He's going to go up to 17 health. We had the classic story of aggro not gaining enough tricks. It's a neat
That was a
draw,
top
though.
deck, but top deck is a Zakia all you want. Your opponent has 7 cards in hand and he's playing control.
They could all be shards. You never know.
They could be, but I'm willing
They probably aren't.
to bet they probably aren't, yeah. But Zakia is his only hope here. Zakia is the light of hope right now. He's just got to hope his opponent doesn't have a direct removal, and he can get one of those Power of Zakia cards. Angel of Dawn off the top. A little bit late to the party, but welcome nonetheless, especially with that Cerebral Fulmination. That could have been very different. That could have been an Angel on the second draw there. There's the Murder, and that's probably the final hope put in the basket, along with the missiles.
The silo has been breached. But you're at 5. Your opponent just doing an angel. Hey, at least that Fiendish Kabbalist, he's got a giant hand, so it'll be big. If only there wasn't a 4/4 flight thing about to fly over. And probably even more removal. It's interesting, enough resources to play both. That's kind of interesting, though. 8/1. The Kabbalist is big enough to block and kill the Soul Cavalry.
Angel doesn't. But as you say, there is an Angel on board right now.
Angel isn't quite fatal yet. And there could be a top deck if unanswered. Deck's not 100% out, just most of the way. But let's see. The game is continuing.
I mean, as I say, this is the control player's dream. No reason to play any cards, and 7 of them in hand.
And receiving extra cards for free. It's like, oh, so nice. Let me just draw all my answers. A pretty classic Blood Diamond style of deck. Soul Marble, Angel of Dawn, Vampire King. 2 shards is not going to help Deck of Many Things, but that's a charge power. Charge power to reveal 7 resources. That's all he wrote, though. That is all he wrote.
So that's a pretty good start for Deck of Many Things there. It was strange. The Extinction obviously was the turning point, and usually Extinction is the turning point. But specifically there, you know, he almost got him down. If that 5th shard had come down at the right time, it might have been a different game. But you know, a couple of turns without shard drops, and the Tarrasques never hit the board on time.
I would say that we're inside deck, but I'm just watching what deck is actually doing in between rounds. That's kind of funny. Perhaps does not have a side deck.
He's very likely dealing with his reserves, and that's his card blocker. If you look at just above it, you can see that he's got his icon set to yeah, the deck building screen.
That's a pretty cool card blocker. Oh, Chad is asking for another pixel of the spoiler. Guess I could give it to them. Whoop. You guys have a long way to go for the spoiler, by the way. Because you know where the text on resources are. Way down there. Looks like the game 2 is about to begin. So let me switch back over. DeckofManyThings, being the non-winner of the last round, will opt to go first.
So there's a Ruby Lance. We didn't see that last time. May have been in the main deck, but that could be a thing he's brought in to deal with, you know, early Angels. It does quite well at doing that. You know, turn 4 isn't a bad time to be dealing with an early Angel. Does have the Anarchist as well, which will help him with his consistency early on. But again, is that double-edged sword that if you don't finish quick enough... and this hand, honestly, I mean, just because it's got an Anarchist doesn't mean he's going to draw into the threats he needs. So this is quite a risky keep.
I'm imagining Psychotic Anarchist attacking and your opponent draws Angel. It's like, no!
That is a strong top deck there. The Alexander, of course, a very strong card for a Tetzar deck, because you don't need to necessarily play it the turn before you play a troop, because you can play Alex the same turn you use that charge power and reduce the chances that you're going to get blown out by any kind of removal. Being able to play Alex and get a large threat on board with speed at the same time is a pretty effective thing.
This is
Sun Marble on 2 again.
a repeat of last game.
Well, except deck doesn't have the extra card draw this time.
Or does he?
Oh, only one.
Does
Oh,
he?
there is another Anarchist. I stand corrected.
We wouldn't have known that. But no, so far, a turn-by-turn recreation of last game. Two double Psychotic Anarchists, both sides drawing 2 cards. And Raglig back down to 14 again. However, this
Lance and a shard. I don't think Lance is what he wanted to pick up there, really. I think at this point he kind of wants, you know, maybe the bolts and looking for his Tarrasque. He's got the resources for Tarrasque.
if that Soul Marble becomes armaments, it gives all his troops Spell Shield, and those lances aren't very useful. They can't target champions. But until then, they're about to start getting useful if his opponent starts playing troops. Oh, an Angel of Dawn discarded. Perhaps that scenario we just talked about happened. Top deck an Angel doesn't play for free because it's not the first card drawn during your turn.
Having Zakir early and the resources to play it here is pretty strong. Can't immediately follow up an Extinction, but it can come pretty close. Again, he is allowing his opponent to draw any answers he requires, which is not the most ideal of things. We see a Meek come down there. That's an interesting one. I guess maybe he has a second Meek, or he just has so much removal that he doesn't mind.
That's also a sign that he might not have Extinction, as if he kept those both alive. With Extinction, since it destroys all troops, you want to get as much value out of that as possible.
Right, right.
But killing that might either be a bait into play another troop, think you're safe, and it might be worth that Extinction, or he just has much more single target removal this time around.
Also, doing that is even more of a risk because it slows his marble down quite considerably. It's going to take an extra turn. Whichever way you swing, it's going to take an extra turn to get that marble out. Now he's used that Meek. So if he did have the Extinction, that was certainly interesting. But it looks like he doesn't. I feel like this would be probably a snap play here. Or maybe he just is fine with the 2-2 and he's got the Murder and he's going to wait
That's
for
an
an Inspire
interesting
trigger.
side deck.
I mean, Chaos Key is pretty strong against Soul Marble, as long as it hasn't transformed yet.
It may get an opportunity to before this this Chaos Key can be used. But if it turns into Soul Armaments, it can be targeted. But if it turns into Soul Cavalry, it cannot, as the Cavalry itself has Spell Shield. But in order to do that, that deck just accidentally skipped his attack. Or he doesn't want his opponent to draw any more cards.
It might be that, yeah. I'm unsure, really.
Perhaps even thinking it could be Repel. But I don't really see much of
I mean,
a
I guess
reason.
it's okay. Okay, so if he attacks with Anarchist, he allows his opponent to draw again. If he attacks with Alexander, he runs the risk of not having a speed elemental next turn.
We've already seen Meek. Well, you are an aggressive deck, so seeing cards like Repel wouldn't be too out of the ordinary. Now, this is almost certainly going to be Soul Cavalry, as Chaos Key kind of forces that.
It does, yes. And he will obviously use his charge power and swing in. The 2 troops on board don't really pose a threat to this cavalry. But this is still quite interesting. I mean, he is going to get the Elemental next turn. He is going to get, potentially, Zakir. He may not need to play Zakir, though.
Oh, now that makes sense. He's Ruby Lancing his own Psychotic Anarchist after blocking, killing the Psychotic Anarchist. There's no crush on the Soul Cavalry, so its damage is lost. It has no damage, so no health gain. So that was an interesting play.
Okay, so this turn, he has the Elemental. If the Elemental is big, he also has a Zakir, which will have speed. So he might actually have damage to represent lethal here.
It's a 5/5.
And force the block, so he doesn't quite have enough. Unfortunately, that Elemental is probably one shy of being useful immediately. But he can still attack with Zakir. And, you know, he can perhaps force the Extinction from his opponent. We have seen that maybe his opponent doesn't have Extinction. And maybe that was the reason for not attacking there. Mostly because if he doesn't have it, he doesn't want to give him the chance to draw it, knowing that he's going to be playing as a Zakir.
So it's up to Raglig with 8 cards now in hand.
He's committed pretty heavily to this board now, so it's important that he keeps at least some of it around. Not seeing anything immediately here, just the swing first. I guess his opponent is deciding to see if and how he blocks. He is going to block, which is interesting.
He's gaining this. Raglig is gaining 6 regardless. It's just a matter of does he want to kill it right away or what? Because he could double block.
I guess in DeckofManyThings' eyes, he's saying if I'm going to lose my board to an Extinction, which he isn't. There's a Solitary Exile to deal with this Zakir. But you know, one of the options was to Extinction there. If he's going to lose his board to an Extinction, then I want to be at 20 instead of 14. Trask isn't awful.
It's not.
One more resource and
which he
that
has.
could have been
what did
very
do it
close.
Now? The other thing that's an option is that now he's mousing over it. That Chaos Key, he can target that Solitary Exile to void it and get his Zakir back.
Yes, the Zakir will still have speed
and
due
he's
to
doing that now.
Being inspired. I think really this is the best play regardless, because next turn he'll have 8 resources, which means he can Tarask and Boulder Toss in the same turn.
Which is certainly a lot of damage.
I mean, without a block, it is going to be lethal, because gaining 6 here will bring the opponent to... Okay, never mind. There's a murder for the Zakir.
All sorts of single target removal.
But had that attack gone through, the life drain from Dimid would have brought his opponent to, I believe, 16? That would have been 14. So yeah, the Trask and Boulder Toss would have been lethal. Unfortunately, not the case anymore. Going up to 19 here will make that just a little bit shy of the potential damage it could be. Cavalry swings in. I don't think he's going to block this time. He doesn't.
There's no reason to. That might be important. A Vampire King. More life, more health gain for Raglig.
A Vampire King without Spell Shield, though, which is fairly important here, considering he's holding that Ruby Lance.
Ruby's almost entirely targeted removal. With a few exceptions here and there. Heatwave being the most notable. So he does have 3 resources. What does he decide? Does he decide to go for broke or kill that threat? He doesn't. He only has Fatal if nothing is blocked. Or I guess he could also have Fatal if Vampire King blocks the Tarask. But he could also kill it and crush all 8 damage through. Raglig does have 1 shard, so 1 more shard will give him another 6 damage attack life drain next turn. So only attacking. So 1 or 2 things happen here. No block. Vampire King blocks, so that's a pretty obvious Ruby Lance on the Vampire King. With the crush interaction, all defending troops are dead, so all the damage goes to the champion. 8 damage through.
And if the Tarask survives here, could be quite good for him next turn. That's Steadfast. Steadfast is always quite hard to get around, especially on a large troop like Cavalry.
Large spell shielded troop. That Ruby Lance, both the Ruby Lance and the Boulder Toss, large enough to take care of it, we're able to target it. The charge does come down for Raglig. He's able to get another 6 health. One can only take so many 6 damage attacks.
I mean, that's true. That's true. That's another Vampire King. That's pretty bad.
This game is so much different if that elemental is oh. This is an interesting turn of events.
I'm gonna math out real quick. So he would potentially crush over 5. No, he would crush over 4. I mean, this is exact damage if he only blocks with Vampire King. Exactly 16 damage if he only blocks with Vampire King. He would crush over 4. Vampire King would gain 3. And then
Exactly 17.
2 Boulder Toss would go through.
And no block. That's really interesting. Is there any answer? Single target removal on Tarask. If he had it, probably would have been played there. No, he was saving it. He's gonna go kill the Vampire King while he can, it looks like, instead of going for the throat. Or does? Yeah, he's gonna go kill the Vampire King. Oh, that's an unfortunate murder. Now Tarask is dead, so the second boulder toss will resolve. It has nothing to throw the boulder, so it just drops on the ground. Limp, lifeless. At 8 damage, will stay potential damage.
I mean, I may have hit the face there. It would have been a risk, but at this point,
You're out
you
of
maybe
fuel.
have to take risks. You know, an out would have been to top deck another Tarask, and that would have closed the game, even with the Vampire King swinging in once. Down to 2 now.
Third Vampire King.
Wow.
And a Tarask. Poor Rock Elemental has done not much but sit there, despite speed. Oh, this game is so different if that had 6 attack.
And a shard top deck is probably the end here. He cannot block 3 troops with 1 troop. That is an impossible factor. And even if he could, he wouldn't be able to block the 3 damage that's coming through in the air right now. GG's going to chat.
And that was a lot of health gain to overcome Mono Ruby, just that damage potential. Zakir's, Tarask,